My name is Liam Young, and I am an artist, director, and speculative architect. And I tell stories about the global, urban, and architectural implications of new technologies. We're in this condition right now where a lot of the technologies that we're faced with are going to radically change our lives and who we are. And I talk about these technologies as being before culture technologies, which means that they're arriving to us faster than our cultural capacity to understand what they mean. So we use imaginary worlds as a way of creating and prototyping the implications of these technologies and drop people in them so they can feel what it might be like. They can kind of prepare for them in a way and start to imagine what technologies we should be investing in and what technologies we should be running away from screaming. Because none of our futures are fully defined, right? Liam Young Building Worlds is an exhibition which is a collection of 6 imaginary worlds, 6 stories, 6 fictions about the possibilities and implications of new technologies in our distant future. The visitors will be able to move through these 6 imaginary worlds and see the ways that emerging technologies like drones, ubiquitous surveillance, smart city technologies, artificial intelligence, massive scale climate change might change our lives and change the cultures and the stories that we tell each other. In the Robot Skies is a film shot entirely using pre-programmed drones that tells the story of 2 teenagers who are trapped in 2 towers, kept apart by a network of surveillance drones, who have learned to hack the drones to send messages to each other back and forth between the towers. So the infrastructure of surveillance that's designed to keep them apart can actually be hacked and used for 2 teenagers to fall in love. New City is a collection of fictional, imaginary future skylines of cities that is built from photographs stitched together of existing cities that's used to exaggerate and project those cities and the trends that we see emerging within them into their possible future. So I often describe myself as a world builder. And what that means is that I don't just make films, I don't just make sculptures or objects or costumes, but rather I create and build and visualize imaginary worlds. And by that I mean that we take something like an emerging trend, like the development of drone technologies or impending radical climate change, and we project those trends into possible futures. And then we visualize what those futures could look like. Who are we in those futures? What are the cultures that are generated in those contexts? And we make films, we make work that helps audiences inhabit those worlds and see them for all the complexity and the richness that they actually contain. So it helps people to start to cope with and imagine what these changes might mean for them. The future is a verb, not a noun, which means that it's not something that rushes over us like water. It's something we can all actively shape and define, but we need to be kind of armed with as much information as possible in order to make the right decisions that might set in motion a future that we all want to live in. So world building helps to flesh out and imagine what these futures could look like so that we can start to make the right decisions that might get us to the future we want to collectively share, not the futures that are going to be sold to us or generate the most profit for a few small group of people. Where the City Can't See is the first film shot entirely using laser scanning technology, which is the technology through which driverless cars see and understand the world. The film captures a group of teenagers across the course of one night in a driverless taxi as they travel to an underground rave to dance and to be young and to camouflage themselves from the eyes of the autonomous machines that are mapping, surveilling, and governing the future city they're existing within. The Great Endeavor is a film, a speculation that visualizes what will be humanity's largest ever construction project, the design of a planetary-scaled carbon sequestration machine that will suck all of the carbon that we've put into the air throughout the history of industrialization and force it into the ground to be stored in rocks for eternity. So I'm trained as a traditional architect, but I now call myself a speculative architect. And what I think that means is that I don't make buildings, but rather I tell stories about the architectural and urban implications of new technologies. I imagine what the future of architecture might be. I imagine what the future of cities might be. And I'll make films and tell stories about that, as opposed to doing plans and sections given to a builder to make actual real buildings in the world. And I think it's a really important role for architects to play. Architecture is a really interesting discipline because it sits at the intersection of culture and technology. And so often architects' skills are just wasted on making physical buildings, which are so often in the service of capital or people with enough money to afford to employ an architect to make them. But I think the role of the speculative architect is to imagine the cultures of space. Architecture is really just about telling stories with and through space. And speculative architecture is imagining what those future stories might be so that we can become more informed citizens today and enact the futures that we want to be living in the distant future. Planet City is the design of a single hyperdense metropolis for 10 billion people, the entire population of the world in 2050, condensed into one place that relieve the pressure on the rest of the world and allow us to return 98% of the planet to a global scale wilderness, a planetary scale park. The Emissary is the design of humanity's last ever object, a spacecraft that is launched into the universe as a monument to ourselves, as a monument to our own extinction, that's designed to drift endlessly, being a record that we were once here. We're in this extraordinary moment of change, right? Like, tomorrow can look very, very different to today through either massive economic collapse, radical climate change, massive inequality. There's so many crises that we're all on the edge of, that what we need to do is start to think about imaginary worlds and use technology to help visualize those worlds so that we can become more prepared for any of those crises that start to happen. If we think about it, the landscape ahead of us, the future worlds ahead of us, is this dark, shadowed, unknown territory. And every speculation, every future story we tell, every imaginary world we might create is like a torch beam, illuminating a little piece of that landscape ahead of us. The more stories we tell, the more of that landscape gets illuminated. The more futures we imagine, the more we can understand what that road ahead of us might be, and the easier it is then to navigate from one side to the other, or to choose our destination and plot the course that might get us there. And I think technologies that can help visualize that world and immerse us in those implications of the decisions we face today are really valuable. So we use game engine technologies, we use the technologies from the visual effects industry, which are usually used to create worlds of entertainment, superhero films, the backdrop for some kind of Caped Crusader moment or some alien invasion. But we use those same technologies to visualize the implications of these new technologies, like drones, like driverless vehicles, like the technologies of sustainable energy systems, the technologies of space travel, to try and figure out ways that we can actually become more educated citizens, not just for entertainment, but we can immerse ourselves in these worlds so that we can start to think about the futures that are coming to us and come together to make collective decisions about the futures that we all want to be living in. I invite everyone to come and travel through these 6 imaginary worlds with us here at Mali. The exhibition is open until May 7th, so come and tell stories about the future together with us here.